Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So as we have recently seen in news that Election Commission of India has sent notices to President of Bharatiya Janata Party as well as Congress Party, and also a petition has been filed in Delhi High Court against Prime Minister Narendra Modi for violation of Representation of People Act 1951 as well as Model Code of Conduct. So in this video, we will be discussing about first, what is the origination of Representation of People Act and when it first came in India. Second, what is Model Code of Conduct and when it was first introduced in India. And third, what is the major difference between Representation of People Act and Model Code of Conduct. And fourth, what happens if any political party or any member of any political party violates any section of Representation of People Act or violate any guideline of Model Code of Conduct. So without any delay, let's begin. So Representation of People Act was first introduced in 1918 in Great Britain and Ireland to bring reforms in the electoral system of those countries. Now, it was first introduced in India in 1950, and next year some major amendments were made and thus came into place Representation of People Act 1951. There were also some minor amendments which were made later on, like in 1966, in 1988 and 2002, but including all these amendments, the act which we follow today is Representation of People Act 1951. Now we move to Model Code of Conduct. Now what is the origination of Model Code of Conduct? So the origination of Model Code of Conduct can be traced back to 1960 when it was first introduced in Kerala during its first state assembly elections. Then in 1962, Election Commission felt that these guidelines are good and they should be followed by all the political parties, and therefore it disseminated these guidelines to all the political parties and state governments. So what is Model Code of Conduct? It is basically a set of guidelines which should be followed during conduction of any election. Now, these came into place by the consensus of all the political parties. They felt that these guidelines we should be following during the conduction of any election. Now we will see that what are the sections of Representation of People Act and what are the guidelines of Model Code of Conduct which have been recently violated by the political parties. So first, talking about Representation of People Act. So the section which has been violated is section 123, which talks about corrupt practices during election campaign by any political party. Now the major clauses of this section which have been violated are as follows. First is section 3A, which basically talks that any attempt to promote feelings of enmity, hatred between different classes of citizens of India on grounds of religion, race, caste, community or language by any candidate of any political party falls under the corrupt practices under this section. Next, we talk about clause 4 of section 123, which talks about that any statement of a fact by any candidate of any political party which is false or which they believe is false is treated as corrupt practice under this section. Next, we move on to the guidelines of Model Code of Conduct which have been recently violated. These are as follows. First, causing tension between castes, religious or linguistic communities. Second, appealing to caste or communal feeling for securing votes. Third, using places of worship for election propaganda. Fourth, bribing, intimidating, impersonating voters. Now we will talk about that what happens if any candidate or any political party happens to violate these sections or guidelines. Now, first is Representation of People Act. So as Representation of People Act is a statutory document and Model Code of Conduct is not a statutory document. Now what a statutory document means? That a statutory document is a document which is passed by an act of parliament. Now, so as Model Code of Conduct is not a statutory document, therefore if any party or any member violates any guideline of Model Code of Conduct, then there cannot be any legal proceeding against it. It is not legally enforceable, and therefore in case of any violation of guideline of Model Code of Conduct, the Election Commission can only send notice to the political party and they can only issue warning against the political party as to not to repeat those particular actions again. But in case of violation of any section of Representation of People Act, it will lead to disqualification of that particular candidate as it is a statutory document. But some of the provisions of Model Code of Conduct can be enforced through different statutes like Indian Penal Code as well as Representation of People Act 1951. Therefore, there has also been a suggestion to integrate Model Code of Conduct and Representation of People Act 1951 to give it a legal standing. So now we know all about Representation of People Act and Model Code of Conduct, and I'm sure that you must have gained good insights about this act and these set of guidelines. So see you in my next video. Till then, stay tuned and stay happy.